High above these cliffs stands a fortress that once struck fear into entire empires. People believed men were trained here, ready to give their lives for a single mission. Their story would later inspire books, movies, and one of the most famous video game franchises ever created. But much of what we've heard about them may never have happened at all. This is Alamut, the fortress of Hasan-i Sabbah. Now recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, yet its greatest mystery remains unanswered. What really happened inside these walls? Long before Hasan-i Sabbah became linked with Alamut, the mountain itself was the fortress's greatest advantage. The castle stands on top of a massive rock with steep cliffs protecting it from almost every direction. Only a few narrow paths could reach the top. Any army trying to climb toward the fortress would be spotted long before getting close. Here, the walls were never the only defense. The cliffs, the height, and the deep valleys around them were all part of the fortress itself. The name Alamut is often connected to an old legend about an eagle that showed a ruler where to build this stronghold. That's why many people also call it the Eagle's Nest. Today, the view looks peaceful, but centuries ago, it was a powerful military advantage. From the top, guards could watch the valleys, the mountain passes, and even enemy forces that were still hours away. Alamut wasn't simply a castle built on a mountain. The mountain was the castle, and yet, the most surprising part of its story is this. The man who became Alamut's most famous ruler didn't capture it with a great battle at all. In 1090, Hasan-i Sabbah arrived at Alamut. He didn't come with a massive army, and he wasn't there to smash down the gates. Instead, his followers slowly moved into the region, built relationships with the local people, and gradually expanded their influence inside the fortress. By the time the commander realized what was happening, much of Alamut was no longer under his control. A fortress that seemed almost impossible to conquer by force had been taken from within. From that moment on, Alamut became the center of a new state. Its territory wasn't one large kingdom, but a network of mountain fortresses spread across the region. Today, UNESCO doesn't recognize Alamut as just a single castle. It was inscribed together with 6 other fortifications that controlled key routes through the mountains. This network allowed Hasan-i Sabbah to stand against far larger powers with only a fraction of their military strength. He could never defeat the Seljuk Empire in an open battlefield, so he changed the rules of war. Instead of capturing great cities, he chose places his enemies could barely reach. Instead of building a magnificent capital, he placed the heart of his power on a mountain that was almost impossible to access from below. But surviving at this altitude required more than strong defenses. The fortress had to survive for months without any help from the outside world. And to take control of this fortress, Hasan-i Sabbah chose a very different path. One that was slower, quieter, and perhaps even more dangerous. Over time, Alamut became famous as a secret fortress filled with deadly assassins. But history paints a far more complicated picture. Inside the fortress were food storage rooms, large water reservoirs, and carefully planned water channels. Hasan-i Sabbah expanded farming and irrigation throughout the valley so the people could survive long sieges. This wasn't just a military base, it was a working community. A place that had to grow food, store water, send messages, and support hundreds of people in one of Iran's harshest mountain landscapes. Alamut was also home to an important library. Historical records describe manuscripts and scientific works that attracted scholars, writers, and thinkers to this remote fortress. Perhaps that's Alamut's greatest contradiction. Outside its walls, it was feared for violence. Inside, it may have been a place of learning, planning, and education. Much of that world disappeared in 1256. When the Mongols advanced, the fortress surrendered. Large parts of it were destroyed, including its famous library. What we see today is only a small part of what once covered this mountain. And maybe that's why the empty spaces between these walls are just as important as the walls themselves. Most of Alamut's story can no longer be seen. It has to be rebuilt from the small clues that survived. Around the world, Alamut became known for one word: assassins. The Nizari Fidais carried out missions against powerful political and military leaders. Many of them knew they might never return. Their enemies saw these attacks as proof of absolute obedience. Centuries later, stories began to spread, claiming that Hasan-i Sabbah drugged his followers and took them into a garden that looked like paradise, preparing them to die without fear. It was an unforgettable story. There was just one problem. There is no reliable historical evidence that it ever happened. Even the historians who entered Alamut after its fall and described its storehouses and library never mentioned such a garden. But legends are often more powerful than facts, and this one spread across Europe. Centuries later, novels, movies, and video games brought it back to life. The famous novel Alamut and the Assassin's Creed series drew inspiration from this history, and in Assassin's Creed Mirage, the fortress appears as one of the game's important locations. Millions of people first discovered Alamut in a fictional world before realizing that a real fortress with that name still stands in the mountains of Iran. Today, as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Alamut is entering a new chapter, not as the legendary home of assassins, but as part of a remarkable defensive network, a center of knowledge, and the legacy of a community that survived in these mountains for more than a century. Perhaps Alamut's greatest secret was never what was hidden inside these walls. Perhaps the real mystery is how the story of this fortress kept changing for nearly 1,000 years, and still continues to fascinate the world.